This is Saskia, and this is Note to Self, your weekly dose of everything that's simply too long to text. Consider this your personal invitation into my inner circle, where I share my thoughts, feelings, and quiet reflections that usually live inside my Notes app. Thanks for joining me. The hottest, most masculine thing a man can do is cry. I said what I said. We are getting into it today. There's a show I cannot shut up about. There's a movement that really changed me, and there's a line from a fictional hockey player that I think more about than I would like to admit. But first, let's kick things off how we always do. I'll tell you a little bit about my week. And hi, it's me, Saskia. Welcome back to Note to Self. So, the man who tried to fist bump my cousin at a rave this weekend, we have to start there. So my cousin, his wife, Jeffrey, and I went to this New York Rave Girls event. So New York Rave Girls, I've spoken about them before. They're these two content creators, music lovers in New York that post kind of all the shows that are upcoming from the weekend. They do reviews on shows, and one of them is also a DJ with another guy. They're in like a two group, but it's two girls who do New York Rave Girls. They were doing what they called a social experiment by hosting a party in Manhattan because all the dance scene is really in Brooklyn. They were trying to see, could you bring back the dance scene to Manhattan and what would the vibe be like? So there's this really cool venue in Lower East Side. Kind of reminded me of Public Records in Brooklyn, for those that know it. Incredible sound system. It has a cute little cocktail bar at the front. And then the dance floor is really small. So like they only sold, I think, 150 tickets. So it's a really small venue, which was really fun. And shout out to the New York Rave Girls for the set. The girl who DJs in that group, I should know her name, but she was incredible. I was obsessed. I will link her Spotify in the show notes because, oh my God, definitely going to go see her set a million times. It was so good. Oh my God. I was like blown away. I think her and the guy she DJs with are going to have a very successful career in their early days now. So I feel like we're seeing them before they get really big. Anyways, the crowd sucked. It was awful. This made me realize why I no longer go out in the city anymore. It was, as New Yorkers like to say, very bridge and tunnel-y, which is like a lot of people from Jersey, which is so mean. But everyone was fucking wasted. It was unbelievable, like so drunk. I had not seen that many like really fucked up people in a long time. So many yappers. Everyone was fucking talking on the dance floor, even though the whole like rules of this place is not to talk on the dance floor and you go talk in the cocktail bar. Everyone was talking. It was crazy. At one point, Jeffrey literally yelled out, "If you're gonna talk, go to the front. Like, why are you in the dance floor just yapping away?" And it was just like a bunch of frat dudes, just all like yap. Clearly didn't know rave culture. And then there was this one dude who would not leave us alone. This man was dressed in like chinos, a polo. I swear to God, he looked like he'd come from the golf course. And early on in the night, he like tried to fist bump my cousin, and my cousin did fist bump him. And he was like, I never should have done it because it opened the door to him like hanging around us the whole night. And he kept trying to like fist bump him. And I was like, I'm having enough of this dude. And also like you're giving it in this weird like masculine like, oh yeah, like good job, dude. And it was just so gross. So he put his hand out like to fist bump, and I just immediately hit the hand down. I was like, no, and just shook my head at him like, shaking my finger. Then he tried to do it again, hit him down again. Finally, I think he got the idea that like these people do not want me around. And his whole group were just so ratchet. This one girl, God bless her, she was just so drunk. Her tit kept falling out. We kept having to be like, girl, like your boobs out, like helping her. And then she went up to the DJ's plane and did a song request. I was like, no, we are not at like a random bar where you can request songs. People were paid tickets to see these people perform. It's a performance. You don't get to request a song. Oh man, it was so painful. Honestly though, incredibly entertaining and thoroughly enjoyed it. So won't be doing it again anytime soon, but great music, terrible crowd. What else is going on? I'm very excited, guys. I have big news. Love Island is back, baby! You always know summer has begun when Love Island starts. Oh, God, I love that show. It's hot. It's summery. They're all hot. They're all so hot. It's just hot. We're just going to use that. There's drama. There was a fucking meltdown happening in the 3rd episode. I'm watching the US one, although today, because I'm craving more, I decided to start the UK one as well. We'll see how far I can go in tandem with both and how much time I have. But going to see which vibes I like better. The US one is definitely more intense. They're so wild, man. They're all just like, it's this season's crazy. It's very like hypersexual. I was almost like, what is happening in these certain moments? And they're all making out within like the first 5 minutes of the show. But the UK one is definitely more subdued. But they're also cute. Like I do like the UK cast so far. God, I love this show, man, though. Like, it is so good. It's so fucking good. The US one just kills me with their, like, they do this weird intro where they do, like, almost like a music video, like you would do as kids when you'd lip sync to a song. And it's just so American. I feel like the difference in the way they shoot it and the challenges, it's just, like, so clearly American versus UK. Thoroughly enjoyed, though. And it just always makes me be like, when Love Island starts, summer kicks off. And also, the other thing that's kicking off summer is going to my first show of the summer at my favorite venue in the city called Under the K Bridge. It is this super cool outdoor music venue that's under these 2 bridges in East Williamsburg. So fucking cool. And I'm just so excited. I get to go back. It's going to be a great day. Anyways, as much as I could talk about Love Island and rave culture all day, we're going to get into it because my pop culture pick of the week is a good one. And I think it's going to lead us somewhere that really matters. So guys, my pop culture pick of the week, I feel like we've come full circle from my solo episode, which was all about heated rivalry. And this week it is Off Campus. And I don't think you really can compare the two because Off Campus is like CW college drama, but more elevated. And Heated Rivalry really felt like art to me. It was, the way it was shot, the cinematography, it was giving much more HBO vibes. The acting, chef's kiss. So I will not be comparing them today, but I will be talking about Off Campus. Because if you want to hear me talk about Heated Rivalry, go back to season 2, episode 1. This season we're in episode 1. Off Campus, however, is romantic story set against the backdrop of a hockey team. And that's about where all the similarities lie. But I feel like the audience is definitely the same for both, probably. For those that don't know Off Campus, a quick summary. Girl meets boy. Girl is super smart, music major, and she has a crush on the hot band boy. But girl is too nervous to talk to hot band boy. Enter the star hockey boy, who approaches our girl, asking her to help him study to pass his exam. But our girl's not interested in this hockey boy because she likes the hot band boy. Hockey boy realizes that she has a crush on hot band boy, and he suggests, how about I help you get hot band boy if you help me pass this exam? And of course, along the way, the hockey boy and our music girl fall madly in love. It's a tale we all know very well. But the reason this show is so fucking good is really, this is just the beginning of it. The show explores love and the complexities of adulthood through these relationships that the main characters have with one another. And it's not just romantic relationships. So much of Off Campus is about the friendships. So what's interesting is Off Campus is actually based on a book series that's composed of 5 novels. It follows these romances or friendships of this tight-knit friendship group. And each book centers on a different hockey player and a different female love interests. And the first season, we focused on Hannah and Garrett. And we started to touch on Allie and Dean, and they're going to be the stars for season 2. But beyond this show just being so goddamn hot, they're all so hot. It's kind of crazy. Like, all of them, all the guys, all the girls. I'm like, who casted this? Because these people are gorgeous. But the script is just incredibly well done. And I read this really cool take on social that I think really encapsulated why I really felt like this show was so important. And I think it points to like a broader cultural shift that's really been happening ever since the Me Too movement. So what I want to go into is this take was from Lindsay Fleming, and she's a psychotherapist, and she highlighted 8 things off-campus did that most shows completely miss. I went and picked my top 4. Again, I'll link in the show notes her full summary so you can go and take a look. But these are some of my favorites. So number 1, it proved chemistry doesn't require toxicity. The relationships were passionate, intense, and entertaining without constantly humiliating or emotionally destroying each other. People are craving love stories where emotional safety still feels exciting. My take here, I really loved that with this show there was yearning, but you also just saw the characters actually getting together and being happy. There were problems that they worked through, but I liked that it wasn't seasons upon seasons of issues where all you're doing is waiting for the couple to kind of sort out their issues. It felt much more realistic. When you like someone, you usually end up dating them. There's not all this drama that ensues for years of your life. And, as the psychotherapist Lindsay said, the relationships were safe. And this was something I've spoken about before, because I think traditionally pop culture has really leaned on Jay Shetty's framework that I always use in this show, which is the firework relationship, where it's hot and heavy, and a lot of the time there's just attachment issues at play. And pop culture doesn't really cover the relationships that are calm and safe, and they can still be passionate, intense, and entertaining. And that's what this show is showing us, is that you don't always need to portray the firework relationship for a show to be successful. You can also show something that's real and safe and comfortable, and it's still intense and passionate. And it was incredibly well done. Number 2, it didn't villainize other women. So the popular girls weren't automatically evil or insecure caricatures. Viewers are tired of female characters only existing to compete with each other. I know most millennial women can relate to this, that so many of the movies we grew up seeing, this was exactly what happened, is the women were villainized, and it was always women competing with each other for men. So what was great in Off Campus is these quote unquote popular girls, they called them the puck bunnies, which I think is so funny. And when Hannah, our main girl, starts dating Garrett, the hockey player, she starts going to his hockey games and sitting with the puck bunnies. And you're kind of waiting and expecting that these popular girls will be mean girls, and they're going to be mean to her, and it's going to follow that classic trope of the popular mean girls. But it never happens. The girls are super welcoming, and they start to build friendships, and that mean girl mentality never arises. And I think it's just so fucking important, because there's this stupid fucking concept that's always driven me mental about this idea that girls are mean. And I think it's such bullshit. And I often really struggle with women who say, I struggle to make female friends because girls are mean and I prefer to hang out with men. And whenever I hear people say that, I often think that might be a sign that you need to look at something within yourself, because this idea that women are mean and they're your enemy is just blatantly untrue. Ultimately, anyone in the world can be mean, no matter what gender you are. Like, mean people is not a gender specific thing. So this idea of making it always seem like women are these like mean girls, that it's like, oh, it's so hard to be friends with girls. It's just like playing into that stupid trope that we've been fed in pop culture. And then building on that, I think this idea of women competing. So what also is interesting is this never came up in the show. So again, when Hannah started dating Garrett, you had learned early on in the show that Garrett had been casually sleeping with one of the puck bunnies, and her name was Kendall. Garrett wasn't great with her. He didn't really treat her very well. He kind of treated her like a late night booty call, and she definitely had feelings for him. I think he knew that, and he never really respected that. And halfway through the show, there's a scene with Garrett and Kendall where he actually apologizes to her. And she ultimately says how happy she is for him that he's with Hannah. And it just felt so wholesome. And it was just so great to see a man recognize his mistake, apologize for it, but then also for both of them to walk away as friends and the other woman not to be like jealous of the girlfriend that he's with, but rather just happy for both of them. There was no fighting over this guy, which again, you kind of were waiting for. I remember watching that episode being like, ugh, they're going to probably fight over him. It's going to be a whole thing. It never happened though. It was so fucking refreshing. I loved it. And I think by not... Oh, something's beeping in my apartment. Oh, it's my slow cooker. Oh, 1 second, guys. Oh, wait, no. It's just going to go off. It'll just be, ooh, that's right. Slow cookers turn off themselves. Ugh, that was a big pivot. I'm making slow cooked rhubarb and apple. Isn't that cute? I went to the markets today and got all these vegetables. It's my little trad wife side of me. Ugh, no, ew, not trad wife. Blah, yuck. That's just me being wholesome. Better. I hate trad wife. Get back to what I was saying. By not villainizing women or men in the show, it equally became about friendships of both the men and women as well. So it was women supporting women, men supporting men. There was a lot of vulnerability in the friendships for the men as well, which again, I think is really important, especially for the male friendships, for men to see generally, because we all know men struggle with being vulnerable, and showing more friendships where men can really speak to each other about their feelings and support each other through their trauma. It's incredibly impactful. And I feel like that was able to exist because they didn't villainize people in this. Point number 3, the trauma felt human. Characters weren't magically healed after one emotional conversation. Trauma showed up through avoidance, anger, attachment issues, perfectionism, and self-worth struggles, the way it actually does in real life. So before I continue into this section, I do want to note that I have a brief discussion of rape that is depicted in the show off campus. So if these themes are difficult for you, please feel free to skip ahead about 7 minutes. And this is a theme that I will come back to later in the episode, so I'm going to flag it again. And if you or someone you know needs support, I'm going to leave some resources in the show notes. So just to flag a little PSA here. Now, this topic around the trauma felt human is huge, and one of the most important reasons why I liked this show. There are a few different traumas that are at play in the show, but I'm going to focus on Hannah. So for Hannah, we find out that she was roofied and raped in high school at a party. She reported the rape and it did go to court, but it ultimately was dismissed by the judge due to quote unquote lack of evidence. We find out that her rapist was one of the star hockey players at her school. And I think she had said something like he was the mayor's son, so he was a big deal in town. And essentially everyone turned against her and said that she was lying, and that the guys who were his friends all lied to protect him. So she had this awful, awful experience, and it resulted in a lot of her and her family being totally dismissed by their community. And she holds a lot of guilt for that. You find out she also feels that has a lot of guilt towards the financial burden that it put on her family for the lawyer fees and the therapy that she needed afterwards. But there were 3 scenes that really stood out to me when the show was covering this topic. The first was when Hannah decides to share with Garrett that she was raped. So at this point, when she shares this, they're not even dating. Things are progressing. You can kind of see they like each other, but she's starting to kind of get somewhere with the hot band guy that she's had a crush on. So she's really focused on that. And she's thinking that it seems like they're likely going to have sex, her and the hot band guy. And he's like invited her over to his I guess, college dorm or whatever. So she's getting really anxious because she hasn't really been physical since the rape. So she decides to speak to Garrett and say, can we have sex so I'm prepared? So she sits him down and says, I need to tell you something, but I don't want you to make a big deal about it. I'm fine. I've worked through it. I just need your help. So it's this very vulnerable scene where she's able to share with him that she was raped, and he holds space for that. And they decide that they're going to try and have sex later that day. It's so funny when you say the rationale of them having sex to make her feel safer. But, ultimately later that day when she goes back to Garrett's, she's still too traumatized to have sex. So Garrett actually suggests that they masturbate together. And he's so kind to her, and he creates such a safe environment. And I think the way that the rape was discussed in this moment was just so important. And seeing what Garrett was doing in terms of making her feel safe, he was checking in on her and saying that she was in a safe environment and easing her into it. It was just the most perfect way that a man can react to a woman who has gone through that. And again, I have to think that like there likely was some type of trauma therapist who advised maybe on some of these script decisions, or maybe the author has had experiences in this herself, because all the ways that he was reacting were so on point to how you should respond to someone who has been raped. So it was incredibly well written. Now, the second scene that was very heartbreaking was later in the series when Hannah calls her mom. Heartbreaking in a good way. So she starts to open up, Hannah, about how guilty she feels for getting raped. And she breaks down telling her mom that she feels like everything is her fault and she's ruined her family's lives. And her mother kind of listens to her, and she just handles it with such kindness and space for Hannah's emotions. And I think it was a really great scene for any parent to see who might have had a child that's gone through something like this. And when Hannah's kind of just spitting it all out around the guilt she feels, ruining their lives, her mother pauses and she says to her, "What did you do wrong?" And Hannah kind of takes a moment and she's like, "What?" And her mother then follows by saying, "Well, if you're feeling guilty, then it must mean that you did something wrong. So what is it exactly?" And Hannah pauses, uncertain. She kind of goes, I should have, and her mother interrupts her and says, "You went to a party, sweet pea. You were a high school kid who had a drink. That's all. You didn't do anything wrong, Hannah. That night and everything that happened after, that is not on you. There is nothing that you could have or should have done. And as far as ruining our lives, I am fine, and so is your dad." Wow. That scene. Her mother, just like the way the dynamic shifted on the "what did you do wrong?" And it really, I remember kind of sitting there being like, where's this going? And then when she kind of said, "Well, if you're feeling guilty, then it must mean you've done something wrong." You were like, it really flipped the whole narrative. And I think it was able to really help Hannah out of this narrative she was telling herself, to stand back and be like, oh, like I didn't do anything wrong. She's the victim here. I just felt like that scene really said it all. And what an important scene for the parent-child dynamic. And finally, the last scene, we see Hannah opening up to her best friend, Allie, about her rape. Again, she holds so much guilt. She feels scared to tell her friend that she might look at her differently, treat her differently, or hate her for not telling her sooner, just like what happened in high school. And again, she is met with such kindness. The girls sit together hands in hand, and Allie says to her that she already knew, and she was just waiting for Hannah to feel comfortable to tell her. I felt it was important to call out these three scenes because there was the reactions from her love interest, her mother, and her best friend, spread throughout the show. It showed her slowly healing, but it wasn't one conversation, because trauma lives with you. It's not healed by one conversation, and so often shows portray it that way. This is something that Hannah will always carry with her, but it will get lighter the more she talks about it and shares with her trusted people. And you start to see that throughout the season. The trauma gets lighter. It's met with kindness, acceptance, and love. And then you can really start to see her healing. You even see the way she talks about it just starts to like lessen in the emotional response. And I think for a show that has likely a very young audience, this was incredibly powerful to portray for them. And honestly, it wasn't just Hannah going through something. And I had said that I wanted to focus on Hannah, but all of the characters were figuring out young adulthood. They were learning themselves sexually, trying to figure out what they like, what they want to do in their life, the type of person they want to be, their relationships with their family dynamics. They were all uncovering different traumas and learning their emotional communication. So you just saw these young people discovering all of that in a really authentic way and sharing with each other and leaning on each other. It was just real pain, and it wasn't manufactured drama, which is so often what shows like this love to do, is they create drama out of nothing instead of leaning on storytelling of real things that happen to people and letting emotions guide the way for the drama. Now, my last point here. Number 4, it normalized conversations about women's pleasure. The male characters openly caring about women's pleasure challenged the idea that emotional attentiveness makes men less masculine and instead made it attractive. So remember the hockey player line that I mentioned at the top of the show? Well, there's this incredible scene where Garrett confides in Dean. He's worried about a girl he's going to sleep with, which is Hannah, and he wants to make sure she orgasms. And Dean tells him, and I quote, "There's one thing that helps make a girl come. The single, most effective, highly recommended, and enjoyed by all tool at your disposal. Trust." That's it. She's got to feel completely safe, completely relaxed. But consent is key. If she can't consent, she doesn't feel safe. I mean, this says it all to me. The hottest, most masculine thing is to be emotional and to feel like you can open up and to be vulnerable and to cry. That is so fucking hot to me. And I think that is the sign of a truly masculine, evolved male. And all these guys are like that. They're all so hot. Oh my God, I can't. And this scene just, I think, really represents a movement that I've been following for many years, which is called Teacher's Consent. And I'm going to be talking more about this later in the episode. But seeing the usage of consent language moving more into mainstream media is so incredibly exciting and well overdue. And on top of that, men actually understanding that sexually women need emotional safety to fully enjoy sex. Or at least that's my experience, but I'm sure a lot of women feel that way. And I just think that's incredibly true. And just like, what a hot scene, being like, trust and consent are the tools to make her come. Hell yeah, dude, he's like brilliant. I'm obsessed. I am obsessed. Whoever wrote that is a genius. I love it. We need all of that. Every man needs to see that scene etched into their brain and approach women like that. Honestly, we should add it into our sexual education. That just that scene. That's all they need to watch. Nothing else. Just get the men to watch that or the boys to watch that and they'll be fine. Anyways, I mean, this show is absolutely wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved the way it covered these really deep themes in such authentic and real and raw ways. But it's still like a fun college, like drama-y show as well. So it's very entertaining. Please go watch it. I'm so excited for season 2 where it follows Allie and Dean because I think they are so hot. Love them. But yeah, that's my pop culture pick of the week, which beautifully leads into my main topic today. However, I told you I would do another PSA because I am going to be covering heavier themes. Sorry, guys. It's not a heavier episode. I think it's just important things to talk about. So before I continue, I want to note again that this section contains discussions of sexual assault. So if those themes are difficult for you, please feel free to skip ahead to the end of the episode. If you or someone you know needs support, again, I've left resources in the show notes. So as I mentioned before, I have been heavy on the teacher's consent movement for many years now. And for those that don't know what this is, the teacher's consent movement began in February 2021 in Australia. A young Australian woman named Chanel Contos posted a poll on her Instagram stories asking if anyone close to them had been sexually assaulted by someone from this specific private boys' school in Sydney. So this was just a random girl posting this. And the response was really overwhelming, though. Within 24 hours, over 200 people had replied yes, with many women then sharing stories of what had happened to them. This then led Chanel to take massive organized action as she realized that this is probably something that is not specific to just this school and likely is Australia-wide. So she started a website called Teacher's Consent, where she hosted an online petition demanding holistic and earlier sexual consent education in schools. And within weeks, the petition gained over 44,000 signatures. I followed this movement when it first began, and I was really passionate about it. I myself have been sexually assaulted, some of which I am still unpacking to this day. And to be honest, I'm not fully at the stage where I want to talk about it fully. nor do I think I need to, but I think it's important just to share my experiences in a way. But ultimately, when this movement happened, it was really affecting me. And at this time, I actually didn't even really define what had happened to me as sexual assault. But there was a part of me that clearly knew what had happened because I was really, really resonated with this. I also think it was very tied to my own high school experience where I was severely slut shamed. And the boys at my school made up this awful name for me and two of my friends, which was the DCC, which stood for the Dirty Cunt Crew. So awful. Honestly, it's just despicable when I think about it. I'm so sad for poor teenage me. But I mean, I've worked on it a lot in therapy. And I think when this movement happened, I felt incredibly empowered because I remember what me and so many of my friends went through in high school. And there was a lot of treatment that was really not okay. And I think growing up in Australia, there's this very kind of underlying masculine culture. There's a lot of misogyny, but it's not labeled misogyny. It exists kind of under this facade of everything culturally. It's you have this Australian culture of everything's fine, we're so laid back, but I feel underneath it is this more sinister side. I hate to use the word sinister, but it's true, where it's misogynistic, it's a bit racist and homophobic, and there's things that people say that they don't even realize how not okay it is to say that. And I think in terms of focusing on the misogyny side of things, it's so embedded that it's kind of hard to even pick apart. Even little things this is a bit of a weird example, but the way men speak about their partners is they'll be like, oh, the missus. It's oh, the missus is needs me to come home tonight. It's this very this ownership over the partner, and then also that it's kind of she's this ball and chain. And it's interesting that whenever I'm home, the men kind of all hang out together and then the women hang out together. It's very separate. Whilst here, I feel we're all integrated. So this kind of cultural practice, I guess, starts, from a young age in high school. And I could see it with the way that the boys treated the girls. Maybe not at the time. I was a very outspoken feminist. So I definitely when the DCC stuff was happening, I was very outspoken about that. And I think it just made people want to fuck with me more because they knew they could elicit a reaction. But I remember the treatment of me and my friends in high school by these boys, and just the slut shaming and often feeling just a sexual object. And probably buried that I don't want to look into are experiences of, sexual trauma. So I think when all of this movement started and seeing this national response, it wasn't surprising to me, but it really fired me up. So part of the teachers' consent movement, Chanel was asking people to write into their schools and share their stories. And I wrote to my high school a long letter. I reached to, explain my experiences with the boys at our school, the slut shaming, kind of, the fact that I think that this is a problem in, our culture generally, and we need consent taught in high school. And I reached out to all my closest friends that I went to high school with, all the women. And I shared my letter suggesting that they do the same and that we could really make this a group movement, pointing to Chanel's, website and what was happening nationally to really push this along. We were just a small part of it, but if we could do it, let's join this movement. What a fucking incredible point in time. But what I really didn't expect, were the reactions. Some of the women I emailed, not all at all, but some, didn't feel like this had happened, which was so confusing to me because I know we went through the same experience. We were all there. And some even felt this is so hard to repeat, this was more of a public school experience than a private school one. So it was more for people that went to public school and not private school, which is the most fucked up thing you could literally ever think is oh, because you went to public school, you're more likely to sexually abuse someone, is so fucked on so many levels. I will just never forget reading that. And I was what the actual fuck? Like, and I'd been living in New York for like 5 years and exposed to so many different things. And, also very thankful for parents who exposed me to a lot of different things. And just to think that, I was like, that is so backward. It really threw me for a loop. And what I thought was also so hysterical is that this movement literally started evaluating mainly private schools. It was looking at all the private schools to start and polling women from private schools. So like, please. Anyways, I'm clearly still riled up about that response. But ultimately, it doesn't matter what type of school you went to. This is a nationwide cultural thing that every single person is affected by. And it's worldwide. Like, let's be real. So clearly still triggers me to this day, but I actually have been able to reflect on it. And I think looking back now, everyone deals with trauma differently. And I think a lot of people preferred not to look at it. And I'm sure that this movement brought up a lot of things for different women around, okay, if I look at this and start defining what happens to us in high school as sexual trauma or sexual assault, what is that going to open up for me? And I think a lot of people I know preferred not to go down that path. And I think for me, though, is like I've always been someone that follows the harder route. And if there's something that feels uncomfortable, I'll dive into it. And I, want to experience what that is. I want to understand it. I have such a passion for human development and human consciousness and how we work and how we respond to things that have happened to us. And I want to be the best version of myself that I can be. And I think to do that, you have to work on your stuff. And I just want to have, I don't know why this is going to make me upset. I think I just want to have the deepest experience you can in this world, just to really experience everything that you can to be a human in this world. And that's why I will always be someone that wants to uncover these things. And that's okay if you don't want to do that. And at the time I didn't understand that. And I think now I have more empathy for the reactions for some of these women, because I think it must just be difficult and something they don't want to look at. And that's okay. But for me, this was also part of taking back my control. And all I could think was, if I can help get this movement, get consent education into the system, then young girls will not have to face what I faced. And you can only have empathy for women that are not willing to kind of go through that. And then also, sorry, I teared up because it's just thinking about young girls and just hoping it's better for them, because I just think it's so fucked up what so many of us had to go through. Yeah, sorry guys, just needed a second. But I think ultimately I did get a response from my school with the letter that I sent saying that it was something they were looking into generally, and they had been following the teachers' consent movement. And it felt really, really fucking good to have shared that and to be a very small part of what I think is one of the most important moments in Australia in the last 10 years. And, a year after this movement started, the Australian government agreed to mandate holistic, age-appropriate consent education across all primary school and high schools nationwide. So this was one of my most proudest moments to be an Australian. And I think Chanel is just such an incredible young woman, and props to her for leading this, because all I can think is just all the young kids who are now learning this. And it's from as early as kindergarten. And obviously, it's formatted to their age, but it's so important. I didn't even have the consent knowledge. I didn't even know what consent was really. I knew it, but I didn't realize that needed to be a part of your sexual experience. And I just wish I had been taught that earlier. And I'm so, so, so thankful that kids are now learning it. And I can only hope that it's going to make things better. And I just really hope that the US could one day follow suit. But I think if we can get it through pop culture, that's also hugely impactful. And that's why I was so passionate about Off Campus, because they're delivering this message. And if that's the way that young people can get it, I'm very, very aligned with that. But really, if you're someone who's gone through something, and I just like was really anxious to share this, and I'm only sharing a high level, I'm not going to go into the details of what happens to me, because to be honest, I'm still trying to work it out. I think there's a lot of things that have happened to me sexually that I didn't define as assault until I had gone into therapy and started, uncovering some of my trauma and realizing that things that happened to me were not okay. And that is a fucking mind fuck to like think that you were not assaulted, to then look back and be like, oh my God, I was. And it's so confusing. And I so understand why women feel so like scared to come forward. And it is just because the way it's portrayed in pop culture, again, is not always how it can happen. And it can have so many shades of gray. There's this incredible play called Prima Facie. It's a Australian playwright. If anyone's ever interested in like a kind of gray area of sexual assault where a woman really like struggled with it because it happened by someone who she knew, which is often the case. It's so well written. Highly recommend it. I saw it on Broadway here. It's really, really well written, but it's worth just reading the play if you can't see it live. But I think that, just like the reason it's hard to share some of it is because like I've only started to touch the surface. And I know that there's things that happened to me when I was younger that I had like, like high school and college days that I've like blacked out kind of thing. Cause it's just like, I just didn't even know about this consent stuff. And like, it's so crazy. It's like, you know about it, but we weren't taught about it. You don't realize like the power that you have. And this is why it's just so important to me. And I think it's so important to talk about because the statistics are real. And this is what I mean about like, this isn't just like a tiny thing that happens in high school. 1 in 5 women have experienced sexual violence since the age of 15. 1 in 5. And I actually think it's probably way higher than that because now that we have more defined language with the Me Too movement and things like this teach us consent movement, I think there are probably more people like me that are starting to look back on their life and realize that they were sexually assaulted. So I honestly think it's probably way higher than that. And all I can say is I always say on this podcast, I really encourage therapy because it has helped me uncover things that I didn't even really know were there. And my therapist even said this week, the more we talk about it, the less power it gives it. And I think that's why I'm, able to speak about it today, about some of this on the podcast. Because normally when I was like literally 6 months ago, if I spoke about this, I'd be like shaking and couldn't get the words out. So the more I've started to speak about it, and this is just another, way of healing with an audience publicly, whatever, it's helpful. I do it because I hope it's helpful for other people. That's why. And if I can be vulnerable to help other people, then that brings me the most joy ever, is knowing that like, maybe there's women listening to this that are feeling seen and knowing that they're not alone. And that is the literal reason why I've done this and why I want to keep doing it and why I want it to be successful, because I think that there's more people out there who can always connect and feel like they need to be seen. But I know this was a really intense topic today, and obviously, didn't dive too far into it, but I really encourage people to go read up on the Teachers Consent website. It's just such an interesting movement. And I think that they're really important topics that as someone who wants to have kids in the next 5-10 years, 10 years, whatever, I'm going to be an older mom. I really like to think about the ways that I can kind of bring this language into my children's lives and ensure that we're raising a generation that's aware of this type of language and what it means. So that's where I'm going to leave it today. I started this episode talking about a show full of hot people, Love Island, and somehow we ended up here. But honestly, that's the whole point of Note to Self. The best stories, I always love to sneak in the real stuff amidst the pop culture fun. And I think that's what Off Campus did. It snuck in some really important real themes in a very fun, sexy show. And that's what I kind of hope Note to Self does. So, if you're someone who's carrying something, whether you know what it is or you're still trying to figure it out, I hope today made you feel a little less alone. And, as my therapist kept saying, I'll repeat it again, the more we talk about it, the less power it has. And I just believe that so fully because I am proof of that. So to the girls who come after us, the girls we are now, the women we are now, the women we are in our future, I have to believe that we are building something better for all of them. The future, the past, our future children, all of it. Because the more open we can be, the more that we will change things. So today got deep. Today got vulnerable. Today was sexy and fun with Love Island and Off Campus. I'm going to probably go and rewatch it because they're so cute. And also going to go finish watching Love Island. Love you all, and I will speak to you next week. Oh, and as always, share with your friends. Thank you. Bye.